Without good blocking, your team's not going anywhere. Cisco blocks cyber attacks for customers around the world, including the entire Fortune 100 and the NFL. Because when the game is on the line, and it's always on the line, the NFL relies on Cisco.
Playing time last week, maybe than we had in the few weeks before that, maybe. How's he been going?
Yeah, I mean, he gets a lot of reps in practice on the scout team, and then, cumulatively, piling up on defense. So it was good to see him get an opportunity. I mean, I made a couple of good plays for us. Same thing in the kicking game, punt team, kickoff team. So progress. They're pretty good depth at that position, so it's got some, pretty good players in front of them.
On the same lines with the depth, Adrian Phillips just maybe playing a little more in the kicking game this year.
Right.
What would you say about his?
Very professional. He does whatever we ask him to do. Ready to go. Stepped in, played well. When he's had the opportunity. Same thing. A lot of depth at that position, but it's not a good job for us in the kick game. Did a really good job when Cody was out. As a personal protector. For the punt team the first third of the season. Guy you can really count on. Just does everything you ask him to do.
Bill, were you ever made aware that there was an issue with the kicking balls on Sunday?
Yeah, we were aware of it in the first quarter.
Did you ever get an explanation for how that happened?
How it happened?
Or what happened?
Well, the officials handled that, and they were underinflated by 2.5 pounds. I think you could see that by the kicks. Both kickers missed kicks, and Butker had missed a kick all year. Kickoffs, we had 2 almost went out of bounds. And so there was 6 balls. It was both sets of balls. It was all 6 of them. So I don't know. You have to talk to the league what happened on that, because we don't have anything to do with that part of it. They control all that. Then they fixed them at halftime, but didn't do it before then, which is another question you could ask. But we don't have anything to do with it. So were we aware of it? Yeah, definitely. But they were all, as I understand it, they were all the same.
Just considering what happened 10 years ago and the money that was spent for that, is it just sort of wild to you that something like that could happen? Whatever is 9 years.
Again, the things that are out of our control, I don't know. I don't know what the explanation is. But I mean, it's the same for both teams, so whatever that means. But yeah. I mean, Butker had a perfect season going.
Coach, not a lot of people were aware that you actually used to coach for Denver back in 1978. Just wondering if anything stands out to you from that season, or just kind of the organization in general still that pertains to this day.
Yeah, it was a great year for me. It was a great experience. The 2 years before that, I was in Detroit. I coached the tight ends and the receivers in Detroit. And then in Denver, went back to working on the special teams and worked on special teams in Detroit too, but worked more on special teams and the defensive side of the ball in Denver. And that was with Joel Collier. And so Joe was, and Richie McCabe. So it was Stan Jones, Bob Zeman, Richie McCabe, and Joe Collier. And then I did the breakdowns and stuff like that. And so I learned a ton out there. I mean, it was a graduate course from Joe, from Richie, about the secondary play, and just in general the 3-4 defense. Now we played a over defense. It was like a version of a 3-4 Detroit, but it was a little bit different. Joe played the 3-4 defense that he played in Denver, which was the spacing was the same, but it was configured a lot differently than what we eventually ran in the Giants when Coach Parcells came. So Baltimore was all 4-3. Detroit was a different version of odd spacing, 3-4 defense in Denver. Then we played 4-3 for a couple of years with Ralph Hawkins in New York. And then when Coach Parcells came, then it was all 3-4, but it was a different type of 3-4 defense than what Joe ran at Denver, even though the spacing was the same. And that was, looking back on it, again, that was a great learning experience because I saw kind of the same thing, but they were actually very different in the way they were coached and the way they were, the schematics of it. And of course that changed some of the fundamentals too. And so that was and the red area coverages that Joe ran out there were, I'd say at that time, he was pretty far ahead of his time. Not that they're pretty common now, but at that time, they were pretty, I would say, unique for the most part. And so that was a great experience. And then, I really didn't have too much interaction on the offensive side of the ball other than just, I was there, but I wasn't in those meetings and that type of thing. But, the program, we lost the, in the playoffs there, but, had a good, team year before they had gone to the Super Bowl, beat Oakland 3 times. So coming off of that year, coming off the 77 season, right? 77 season, they lost to Dallas in the Super Bowl. So a lot of good players, a lot of really good players out there, and a lot of good coaches, a lot of good experience that I gained, with Babe Perilli, who was quarterback coach. They had Morton, and I learned a lot from Babe too, because I spent a lot of time with Babe. Just, he kind of mentored me from the opposite side of the ball. I asked him a lot of questions and bothered him a lot, but he couldn't have been more accommodating from, just the quarterback coaching perspectives. That's something I hadn't done. So, yeah, I learned a lot out there that year.
Coach, you mentioned the 3-4 and odd spacing. I was wondering, how do you differentiate those, and how have you seen them change from your days with Denver to the modern league?
How have we seen what change?
The structures evolve and how teams kind of use them. You mentioned there were different variations in spacing and things like that. Is there anything more common?
You're talking about the 3-4 defense?
Yes, sir.
Right. Well, like Pittsburgh has their 3-4 defense. I would say that's a lot different than, way, way different than what Joe's defense was in Denver. The spacing the same, but the coverages and the way the defense is structured is just a lot different. In Denver, you play the ends in 5 techniques. Pittsburgh plays them inside the tackles. We call it 4-eye. They overshift into some unders. Joe at Denver, we'd go into a game with 50 different fronts. So the 3-4 became a 4-3. It became an over. It became an under. It became an even. It became, a multitude of fronts and stunts that went with those fronts. But we really only ran, call it 2 coverages, 3 coverages. But the variety of the fronts were, it was hard to block those fronts because there was so many different looks, so many different combinations, and we had good players. We had Reuben Carter on the nose, who was really good, Alzado, who was good, Chavis, who was good, then Gradishar, and Jackson and Swenson were the 2 outside linebackers, so they were both really good. They could rush, they could set the edge. Jackson was fast, and so those guys on the front were a real problem. If they just sat there and never moved, they would have been a problem. But then when you put all the different combinations together, and Billy Thompson is a safety who was, really one of the best. I've coached a lot of good safeties, but he's right up there. He's one of the best ones that I've coached or that I was with. So, yeah, it's just a different system, that's all. But it's, again, it was a good learning experience because when I came to New England, or when Bill came to the Giants from New England and brought the 3-4, his version of the 3-4 in, which was from Fritz Shermer, who Fritz was in Detroit when I was there, when we played that like over 5-2 at Detroit, Bill's 3-4 was a lot different than Joe Collier's, and so as a as a coach, I kind of sat back and, saw some ways to maybe merge some of those things together, which as I've gone on in my career, I've, taken some things that Joe did, some things that Bill did, and kind of, merged them together along with some other stuff too.
This season, how is David Andrews, with all the challenges, how is he kind of showing himself as a leader?
Fantastic. He's been, he's done he's as good as I've seen, honestly. Every day, his performance on a daily basis is really exceptional. Attitude, effort, communication, energy, leadership with younger players, leadership with his peers, communication, you name it. And look, like everybody, plays a lot of football, you get banged up and, deal with some stuff during the year. He's showed a lot of physical toughness to play through that, a lot of mental toughness. He would never come out of practice for a play. We have to take him out to, kind of help manage, some of the bumps and bruises that he has. But, this guy is a warrior.
He came out the other day with the cutout sweatshirt look and said he got it from you. What do you think about that? Him coming out with that look?
Yeah, I have my fashion trends. One of the things I'm known for, fashion.
So you haven't had to face them very much throughout your careers, but what kind of challenges does Sean Payton's offense present?
Yeah, Sean does a great job. Sean's a really, really smart guy. Has a great, I would say, background in terms of just football fundamentals, toughness, a playing style that's a little bit of a throwback style, but at the same time very, creative and understands defenses extremely well and knows how to attack defenses and really puts a lot of pressure on the defense. Almost every play he runs, you can kind of, especially the ones he runs against you, he may run other stuff against other teams that wouldn't be that big of a problem for you. You probably won't see it. The things that you see are, things that are designed to, give you a headache, and they usually do. Especially if he can hit it right. Sometimes, the plays don't match up, but you can see what he's trying to do and come out of there saying like, well, we were fortunate we were in this defense and not that defense, because that would have really put us in a bind. They play fast. There's not much no huddle, but the tempo that they play with in and out of huddle, motion, snap the ball, receivers are aggressive. Like Humphrey and guys like that, guys that he's had, Thomas and New Orleans and all. So they have a very aggressive style of play. Play with a fullback, play with multiple tight ends, play with a heavy lineman, and then you have to deal with a passing game too. That's obviously got a good quarterback and multiple good receivers, good tight ends. Tight end's been hurt a little bit, but so you got to deal with a heavy run, heavy personnel with an aggressive running game, all the way to multiple receivers with good skill players with a very mobile quarterback. And I think the offensive line, he's done a good job of those guys have really I'd say continue to get better on a week to week basis. Mine Hurts has had a good year. McGlinchey, Bowles, Powers. They've, Sean's built certain things around what he, what the team is right now. I don't know if that's what it'll be, eventually, but what it is right now, he's done a good job of building, playing into those players' strengths, and he's got a bunch of veteran players in there that know how to play, know what they're doing. And kind of once they got going, they've played really well. So, yeah, a ton of respect for Sean. He's one of the best.
When did you get to know him throughout your coaching career?
Well, we had common experience, through Bill. Both were from Parcells, so so we've both been yelled at a lot. So we share a lot in common there. All right, great, thanks.